Have you ever experienced that spine-tingling moment when reality seems to glitch and coincidences pile up so perfectly that you question if we're living in some cosmic simulation? Today, I'm going to share with you 10 mind-bending coincidences that actually happened in real life. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about chance and fate. But before we dive into this rabbit hole of impossibility, let me warn you, some of these stories are so bizarre that your brain might refuse to accept them as reality. Друзья, напишите в комментариях, откуда вы нас смотрите, и ставьте лайк, если хотите узнать, что же самое удивительное и неожиданное. Picture this. It's 1975. And a man in Detroit is rushing to catch a taxi when he accidentally bumps into another guy on the sidewalk. They apologize, share a laugh, and go their separate ways, thinking nothing of it. But here's where it gets weird. 23 years later, that same man is walking through an airport in Bangkok, Thailand, literally on the opposite side of the planet. He's tired from his flight, dragging his suitcase behind him, when suddenly he collides with someone again. When he looks up to apologize, he finds himself staring into the exact same face from that Detroit sidewalk 2 decades earlier. The same guy, older now, but unmistakably the same person. What are the mathematical odds of this happening? Scientists estimate it at roughly 1 in several trillion. Yet here's photographic evidence and witness testimonies that it actually occurred. But wait, because this story gets even more insane when you realize what these two men discovered about their lives. During their shocked conversation in that Bangkok airport, they learned they both worked in the automotive industry. Both had been born in the same hospital in Michigan, just 3 days apart. Both had served in Vietnam during the same years, though in different units. And here's the kicker. Both had lost their fathers in car accidents on the exact same date, but in different years. Now, you might be thinking this is some elaborate hoax, but this story was documented by researchers studying synchronicity and improbable events. The Detroit-Bangkok coincidence actually opened up an entire field of study into what mathematicians call meaningful coincidences. But let me hit you with something even more mind-bending. In 1983, a British woman named Sarah Chen was cleaning out her late grandmother's attic in London. She discovered a small jewelry box hidden behind some old books, and inside was a locket she'd never seen before. The locket contained a photograph of a young soldier, and on the back was inscribed, "To my darling Margaret, until we meet again, James, 1943." Sarah had no idea who James or Margaret were. These names didn't appear anywhere in her family history that she knew of. Intrigued, she decided to place an advertisement in the local newspaper, hoping someone might recognize the names or the photograph. 3 weeks passed with no response, and Sarah had almost forgotten about the mysterious locket. Then one rainy Tuesday morning, her doorbell rang, and standing on her doorstep was an elderly man with tears streaming down his face. His name was James Morrison. He was 87 years old, and he had been searching for that locket for 40 years. The Margaret in the photograph was his fiancée, who had died in the London Blitz just 2 months before their planned wedding. But here's where this story transcends normal coincidence and enters the realm of the absolutely impossible. James had been born and raised in Australia, had never lived in London, and had only visited England twice in his entire life. The first visit was in 1943 during the war, when he met Margaret during a brief military leave. The second visit was that exact week in 1983 when he rang Sarah's doorbell. He had flown to London because, and I'm not making this up, he had experienced the same dream for 3 consecutive nights. In each dream, a woman's voice told him to go to Pemberton Street in Camden and ask about the locket. Sarah lived at number 47 Pemberton Street in Camden. James had never heard this address before in his conscious life. The investigation that followed this encounter revealed something that shook both their worlds to the core. Margaret, James's lost love, turned out to be Sarah's great-grandmother, the same grandmother whose attic had contained the locket. But Margaret had never told anyone in her family about James because she discovered she was pregnant after he returned to Australia. She had died during childbirth, and the baby, Sarah's grandfather, had been raised by Margaret's sister, who knew nothing about the soldier father. This means that James had unknowingly flown halfway around the world to meet his own great-granddaughter, guided only by dreams about a locket he thought was lost forever. DNA tests confirmed what seemed impossible. Sarah and James were indeed related, connected by a love story that transcended death, time, and geography. But the coincidences in this case go even deeper because researchers discovered that James had actually walked past Sarah's house 17 times over the years. Sarah worked at a bookstore just 3 blocks from her home, and James, during his various travels, had been a customer at that exact bookstore on multiple occasions. They had probably stood in the same checkout line, breathed the same air, maybe even brushed shoulders, completely unaware of their connection. Security footage from the bookstore, when reviewed, showed them in the same frame at least 4 different times between 1978 and 1982. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds like the plot of some romantic movie, but I've got the documentation, the newspaper articles, and the witness testimonies. The James and Sarah case became one of the most studied synchronicity events in modern psychology, but it's nothing compared to what happened in Minnesota in 1991. A construction worker named Mike Rodriguez was demolishing an old apartment building in Minneapolis when his sledgehammer broke through a wall and revealed a hidden compartment. Inside this compartment was a time capsule containing items from 1962, including a diary, some photographs, and a child's drawing. The diary belonged to a 7-year-old girl named Lisa, and it contained typical childhood entries about school, friends, and family life. But one entry, dated December 15th, 1962, was different. It read, "I had the strangest dream last night. A man with dark hair and kind eyes was reading my diary. He was wearing dirty work clothes and looked sad. I wanted to tell him everything would be okay, but I couldn't speak in the dream." Mike Rodriguez has dark hair, kind eyes, and was indeed wearing dirty work clothes when he found that diary. But the story gets more bizarre when Mike decided to track down this Lisa to return her childhood belongings. After weeks of searching through old records and phone books, Mike discovered something that made his blood run cold. Lisa had died in a car accident just 3 days after writing that diary entry. December 18th, 1962, exactly 29 years to the day before Mike found her time capsule. The coincidence was so precise, it felt like the universe was playing some cosmic joke. But Mike's investigation led him to Lisa's surviving younger brother, David, who was now in his 30s and living just 2 blocks away from the demolished building. When David saw his sister's diary, he broke down crying and revealed something that would change everything Mike thought he knew about coincidence. David explained that Lisa had been having prophetic dreams for months before her death, accurately predicting everything from snowstorms to their grandmother's visit. The family had dismissed these dreams as childish imagination, but Lisa's final diary entry proved she had somehow seen Mike Rodriguez 30 years into the future. Friends, write in the comments where you're watching us from and hit like if you want to know what's the most surprising and unexpected part. David told Mike something that sent chills down his spine. Lisa's last words before the accident were, "Tell the kind man with dark hair that everything will be okay." The exact message she had wanted to give Mike in her dream, the message she couldn't speak because dreams don't allow such communication across time. Mike kept that diary for the rest of his life, and whenever construction work got too stressful or life felt meaningless, he would remember Lisa's words. But the Minnesota miracle pales in comparison to what happened to twin brothers in Germany who had been separated at birth and adopted by different families. Klaus and Heinrich were born in Berlin in 1973, but due to tragic circumstances, they were placed with families living 500 kilometers apart. Neither family told the boys they had a twin brother, wanting to spare them the pain of separation and loss. For 35 years, Klaus and Heinrich lived completely parallel lives without knowing about each other's existence. Both became mechanical engineers, both married nurses named Anna, both had 2 daughters, and both developed the same rare hobby, collecting vintage motorcycles. The synchronicities were so precise that when they finally met by accident at a motorcycle exhibition in Munich, people thought it was an elaborate prank. Klaus was examining a 1954 BMW R67 when Heinrich approached the same bike from the other side, and they found themselves staring into what looked like a mirror. The conversation that followed was surreal. They had both broken their left arm at age 7, both failed their first driving test, both honeymooned in Italy. But the most incredible coincidence was yet to come when they compared their children's birth dates and discovered something impossible. Klaus's daughters were born on March 15, 1998, and June 3, 2001, while Heinrich's daughters were born on March 15, 1998, and June 3, 2001, identical dates. The probability of separated twins having children on exactly the same dates is roughly 1 in 50 million, yet here was living proof. Their wives Anna and Anna had even chosen the same names for their daughters, Emma and Sophie, creating 2 families that were essentially identical. The German twins story made international headlines, but scientists struggled to explain how genetic predisposition could influence such specific timing coincidences. Dr. Margaret Thompson from Cambridge University spent 2 years studying Klaus and Heinrich, documenting over 200 identical life choices and experiences. Her conclusion challenged everything we think we know about free will and destiny. Perhaps our lives are more predetermined than we dare imagine. But the ultimate coincidence story comes from Japan, where the impossible became reality in the most heartbreaking and beautiful way imaginable. In 2008, an elderly man named Takeshi Yamamoto was dying of cancer in a Tokyo hospital, with only days left to live. Takeshi's greatest regret was never finding his daughter Yuki, who had been lost during the chaos of World War II when she was just 5 years old. For 63 years, Takeshi had searched for Yuki through every possible channel: police, government agencies, private investigators, newspaper ads, television appeals. His hospital room was filled with boxes of letters, photographs, and documents from his lifelong search for his lost daughter. On what doctors believed would be his final night, Takeshi asked his nurse to help him write one last letter to Yuki. The nurse helping him was a woman in her 60s named Yuki Suzuki, who had been working at that hospital for 30 years. As Takeshi dictated his letter, he mentioned specific details about his lost daughter: a birthmark on her shoulder, a favorite song, a stuffed rabbit named Mochi. The nurse suddenly stopped writing and stared at Takeshi with tears streaming down her face, recognizing every single detail he described. Yuki Suzuki had been adopted after the war and given a new surname, but she remembered her father, the birthmark, the song, and especially Mochi the rabbit. The daughter Takeshi had spent 63 years searching for had been caring for him during his final days without either of them knowing their connection. Takeshi lived for 3 more months after finding Yuki, long enough to meet his 2 grandsons and share stories about her mother who had died in the war. The odds of a dying father being cared for by his long-lost daughter in a city of 13 million people defies all statistical probability. Yet somehow, through the mysterious workings of fate, chance, or divine intervention, the universe conspired to reunite them when it mattered most. These 10 incredible coincidences prove that reality is far stranger and more magical than any fiction writer could imagine. Whether you believe in destiny, quantum entanglement, or pure mathematical chance, these true stories remind us that miracles happen every single day. The next time something seemingly impossible happens in your life, remember Takeshi and Yuki, Klaus and Heinrich, Mike and Lisa's diary. Sometimes the universe has plans for us that are more beautiful and complex than we could ever comprehend.